Good evening. This is Peter Helland with Dr. John Austgen, who's been on the show before, and on Faith of Our Fathers. And he is one of probably the best experts in the South Bend community that I know of on the subject of AIDS, HIV virus. It's a big issue because we're spending about $140 billion so far of our taxpayers' dollars trying to hunt down this virus. Let's look at a scripture to just have a background of some kind of scripture. Revelations 20, it talks about Satan and that the angel cast Satan into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more. Then the 1,000 years were over, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations. Obviously, Satan is trying to deceive every individual soul so that they do not see who Jesus Christ really is. And if they could see who Christ really was, believing on him, they could be rescued from the God of this world. Well, he's also deceiving nations, and he has a plan for all nations, and obviously he has his best plan for the most influential nation. And part of that plan of deception, it appears, to be this illusion or this myth of the reality of AIDS and HIV. There is a worldview behind those who are pushing the AIDS, and it's definitely not coming from Orthodox Christianity. And I think Dr. Austgen has looked at this. He's been studying this intensely since 1994. I just asked him today. He said about 3-4 hours a day. He's been studying this, and he says actually 24 hours a day because it's constantly the 3 or 4 hours that he's directly involved. He's spending the other hours reflecting, probably, on that. So it's very unusual to find somebody that's given this much time to it, who's also retired and has a wealth of knowledge in this kind of field. Most people that are giving their view on AIDS, as far as expertise, they're connected to a paycheck. There's money involved in this gospel of AIDS that's out there. And we all know that the gospel and filthy lucre cannot be mixed because money generally perverts the message. And I think what we have here with Dr. Austgen is there is no money involved in his view on AIDS here.
Right.
I think what we need to do for people that are watching here is, can you give us a background of where you come from, how you got involved, what is your expertise? I know you're a dentist.
Right.
And bring people up to where we want to. You have some very good information to bring forth, but can you bring people up to where they can understand what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah. As a dentist, when this so-called HIV virus came into the country, it was about 3 years after it supposedly appeared in this country that there was a great deal of fear that anybody exposed to blood that contained this so-called virus was in danger of coming down with HIV infection and then developing AIDS. So we were, as dentists, we were barraged with warnings and information about this, the steps we had to take to prevent getting it ourselves from the blood of our patients, what we had to do to prevent giving it to patients, perhaps through unsterilized instruments. And I think more than a few dentists decided it was time to retire because they didn't want to come down with AIDS. A number of physicians did. Lorraine Day, who was the chief orthopedic surgeon at San Francisco General Hospital, gave up her medical practice for fear that she would get HIV infection and then give it to her children at home. Orthopedic surgeons are covered with blood when they're operating. You never know. You never knew at that time. They said, oh, just a little bit of blood on some chapped skin and you can get HIV infection. It worried me. I thought, I have a wife and 3 children at home. What should I do? So that was in 1994, I think. In Fidelity magazine, Mike Jones had an article called Killed by the Cure. What really killed Kimberly Bergalis, Ryan White, and Arthur Ashe. And I thought I knew what killed him, HIV infection. So I was fascinated. I knew Michael Jones. I knew about his work, and I thought he was a trustworthy man. So I read the article, which was written by a physicist. And it made me wonder. He was expressing some doubt about this whole thing. And one of his special concerns was the use of this antiretroviral drug called AZT. So I decided to check it out. I started making phone calls. I called the American Red Cross. I called all 3 manufacturers of clotting factor. I called Abbott Labs, and the answers I was getting were, they didn't make sense. And then I started writing letters to different people, asking questions, and again it was the same thing. These people, many of them who answered me, were doing a straddle. They were putting themselves in a position where if it turned out that all this stuff was wrong, they could say, see, I told you so. On the other hand, if there was an HIV virus and it caused AIDS, they could say that too. And I thought that was strange. So some friends of mine gave me an article. It was a letter to the editor in the Chicago Tribune written by a dentist from Waukegan, Illinois. And he was questioning this HIV AIDS thing. So I contacted him, and we talked on the phone for a few hours and exchanged a lot of letters. And then I was directed to join this group called the Group for the Reappraisal of AIDS. I didn't know this group existed. Well, I got their newsletter, and there were quite a few prominent scientists involved in this. They were questioning the whole thing. Some of them were questioning it on the basis that HIV exists, but it can't cause AIDS, and others were saying there's no proof that this virus existed.